All right. Hello and welcome everyone to a new training webinar at Scilife. My name is Angel Buendia. I'm the knowledge manager at Scilife, and I'm going to be your host for today's training about the following topic. It is about artificial intelligence for quality management systems. Okay. So if this is your first time, I am going to tell you that this is a session that is structured in two different sections. The main section is the training itself. It will take about 45 minutes. And then afterwards, we will have some time for the Q&A session, right? So about 10 minutes. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can feel free. You can type them. You can use the Q&A button. This is next to the chat button. Okay, so I will collect all the questions. Yes, and Martin afterwards, yeah, we'll try to answer as many as possible. Okay. So now let me introduce today's topic. It is about best practices applying artificial intelligence GPT with quality management systems. And today I'm really excited about this topic. It is about using generative pre-trained transformer models. And yeah, Martin, who is the speaker, I will present it to you afterwards, will help you to see how you can transform your quality management practices using AI GPT. Note that in contrast with traditional systems, AI can perform tasks that are more, they can perform them more reliably and more efficiently than some humans. So in today's training, we will examine the benefits, we will examine real-world applications and effective risk management practices of GPT models in quality management systems. So this is why we have with us our expert speaker. He's Martin King. He's a freelance consultant, and he will provide practical insights and some examples to help you integrate AI to your existing QMS. Okay, so having said that, I'm pleased to introduce Martin King. Hi, Martin. Thank you very much for being here.
Hi, Angel. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Scilife, and of course, thank you to the audience. This is my first Scilife training, actually, and it's really a little bit of a privilege for me to be able to give this. I would like to start a little bit about myself. I've been working in medical devices and pharmaceuticals since 1979. And so you might be surprised that an old man like me is still using tools like AI. It's been a requirement. I've had to use these tools really because one of my tasks, I do a lot of work with companies and supporting them with their regulatory submissions. And very often I need to be able to find the way. Regulatory affairs is all about finding the way. And GPT tools are a very good way to use that. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go through how I view we can use GPT safely with quality management systems and how we can really get some benefit from them and perhaps speed up our work and make our work more efficient and safe. So if we move on a little bit, we have our first questionnaire for you to answer. You know, how many are you already using AI in your QMS? You know, do you use it often, just use it sometimes, or not at all? You're forbidden because the company doesn't allow it, or you have no idea if people are using it. And we will address some of these issues later on, but we would be very interested to hear from you how you're using it and what you're doing. And if you have questions, just do not wait until the Q&A session. Just write them down in the question box, and then we'll try and address them all at the end. So while you're going through that poll, let me show you something. So here's something I've set up. And we have ChatGPT and we have Gemini. So Gemini is from Google and ChatGPT is from OpenAI. So we can ask this a question, a very simple question. I can say something like, please write me a risk management section of a quality manual. Right? It doesn't matter what we're working in, what kind of device. We need a quality manual for our projects. And we need, usually in that quality manual, there's a risk management section. So let's see what these two tools tell us, how they answer our tool, answer our question. And there we have it. We have ChatGPT on the left-hand side and Gemini on the right-hand side here, both giving us a very comprehensive answer. But here's the thing. If I'm going to use this, I first of all need to declare that I'm going to use it. But the other thing is this is great, but unless I'm an expert, for instance, in the risk management, how do I know what I'm being told is useful? How do I know it's useful for my company or for the project I'm working on? So that's just a little bit, some of the things we need to look at today to see how we're going to move forward and address these points. So I hope you've all had time to fill in the poll. I mean, here's another one, a little question. Oh, look, it's really interesting, yeah?
Yeah, we have the result of the
88,
first poll.
half the people haven't used it, right? This is sometimes, yeah, 1/3. Mm-hmm. 1/3. This is quite interesting, yeah? So people are using these tools to support their QMS in some way. That's the key thing. And I sort of have this approach with AI, which is, you know, there's a lot of consultants. If you're talking to consultants about AI, they will say, well, they probably used ChatGPT once or twice and it gave them answers that weren't how they would write it. And so then they sort of say their technology is not ready yet. And so we need to think about, okay, the technology is not ready yet, but it's coming. So you better be ready, because if you're not ready, you won't be able to use it when it is here and it is ready. In my opinion, it's ready. It's already useful and it will improve as we go on. So we have another poll here. Have you used AI to write your QMS documents? Just as I did, just as I showed you with the quality manual section on risk management, we see that, you know, this question is saying, yeah, have you used it? It doesn't mean did you get the AI to write your quality manual, but did you use it to help you? Did you use it to give you some text? Did you use it as a prompt? Because I think that's the very powerful part of using AI today with quality management systems. I actually used a quality management system to help me with risk, a GPT system to help me be quicker at filling out a very long FMEA. I had all my failures, I have all my failure effects, I have all my causes, and I can select from those, and I need to select the right one that matches the particular hazard. And GPT is a great tool for that because it takes me time to think about each one, whereas GPT can give me an answer straight away, and then I can say, well, does this make sense? Is this a real, does this make sense or not? And what you have to do is you have to teach the tool. You have to go through the exercise several times. You have to say, oh, that's not what I really wanted. I wanted something else. And then it will give you the answer as you're going along. Do we have a result from this poll yet? Oh, there we go. Roughly the same, okay? So roughly the same division. We have a bigger number of people not saying no, but we have like 30, we can say 30% of people are using it in some way sometimes. Great. So what we're going to do today, I've already sort of told you. So why is AI important for QMS? What is AI? What, you know, it's not Chat GPT in that sense. It's like, what are we actually using when we're using it? And how does that, who owns the output of AI? You know, does it belong to me? Does it belong to someone else? What issues of confidentiality do we need to consider? We have already looked at a real live example case of some document authoring, and we can look at some more perhaps. AI and regulatory intelligence, how is it being used today and how will it be used moving forward? And here, risk management. What are the hazards of AI in a QMS? ISO 13485 for medical devices says we need to use a risk-based approach. How can you use a risk-based approach if you're not doing a risk evaluation or assessment of your own QMS? And if you're using AI in your QMS, what are the hazards there? What are the things you have to look for? And what are the mitigations? What are our controls? And of course, after all of this, all this information, we can sort of come up with a good AI practice. Yeah, how will we see GAPE as a good AI practice moving forward in the future? I don't know, but yes, it's a good term, GAPE. And of course, we need to think about training. And what we need to do is the bus is coming and we need to know what the future trends are. So I'll cover some of that. And then all the questions you're asking as we go along, we can address at the Q&A session. So why is AI important for QMS? Whether you like it or not, and whether 30% of people are using it here, it's coming, it's here, and people will use it. And it is very difficult to control in an organization. So it's important in this whole area of medical quality management systems. And if we think about AI is being used for drug development, AI is being used for device development, and AI is being used in the devices. And AI is being used in the manufacturing. So AI is everywhere. So how can it help us? Well, it's important for a QMS because in a QMS, one of the things we're doing all the time is we're monitoring what's happening to our product in the market. So it helps us do data analysis and insights. And it helps us try and predict what's going to happen. Right? We have mathematical tools where we can predict failure, we can predict reliability. But for instance, with a drug product, until that product is in the market with millions of users, we won't really know if there's a problem with it. We hope there won't be a problem because we've had our clinical trials. But the ultimate test is when that product goes into the market. And using advanced tools for forecasting and looking at patterns, we can perhaps predict things happening before they happen and take action as required. If we see a patient with a specific combination of indications where we see, oh, our drug is not working as we expected in these particular cases, 1 in 10 million or something like that. We're able to automate processes. So we're able to do things more efficiently. I wouldn't say quicker, we're able to be more efficient. and we're going to be better and more consistent at reporting. We can improve compliance and risk management. What's the first thing you do when you get a rejection from an organization like the FDA or a notified body? You do a gap analysis. You can use your AI tools to help you in that process and speed up that process, at least identify things that you as a person might not be able to identify, because by the time you've got to the end of the 100th document, you've forgotten what was in the middle of the 10th document. So regulatory management and risk prediction. Then we have quality control and assurance. We're testing our products before they go out. We do batch release. We do homogeneity over a series of a batch. All of these things, we can be using our analytic aspects to predict if we have a potential issue. It might not prevent or stop production, but it might enable us to take action early in order to prevent an issue later on. And how many times have you had a customer ask you a question and you still don't quite understand what they're really asking? And these tools are really great for, I use it. I mean, what does this person mean with this question? What are they really trying to understand? You know, English is my mother language, but that doesn't mean that I don't have difficulty sometimes interpreting what other people are trying to ask. Or they may have experienced something and they're describing the effect or their experience, but it's very difficult to understand. And tools like GPT can help us. So what is artificial intelligence and how does it work? This may sound really basic, but I think it's quite important. It's important for us to understand the tools that we're using. We don't have to be engineers and experts to understand that. So here we got a nice definition. Artificial intelligence refers to the use of computer systems capable of performing tasks that typically require human intelligence. It doesn't say these systems are intelligent. It says it's capable of performing tasks that normally a person would perform. And here we have a really interesting part, and that is that we use the term context. So in the context of quality management systems, we can use these to improve the way we work. But they don't Replace us. Maybe one day, but right now we're quite a long way from that. And the issue is that AI systems today, or GPT systems, are using contextual aspects, and we'll come on to what that is, in order to give us the answers we're looking for. So what is GPT? 3 things. Generative. It means that the tool can create an output that we like. It's like, oh, it's almost like a person wrote this. This is great. I do see that GPT tends to use some words. You can always see a LinkedIn post that someone took straight from GPT without checking it, because it has words like crucial and vital, and it uses words like that very, very repetitively. Pre-trained. So these are systems that we have trained. It's had an awful lot of information fed to it. More information than probably an individual can take. Even like an information junkie like me, GPT probably takes, it's nothing. What the information that I can store is nothing compared to these systems. Transformer. This is the brain of the system. It's the piece that says, how do I get that question to an output that my user is going to be able to use. So it's very useful to remember these three words: generative, pre-trained, transformer, especially with the pre-trained piece, because when you're using these tools, sometimes you don't get an answer that you need. And you can go back and say, well, I need this in a slightly different way, or I need it as a table. Can you present it to a table with these headings? And it will come back and it will give you the data back in a form that perhaps you asked for, and then you have to ask the question again. But 3 or 4 questions later, you have what you were looking for, or something very close, and you can edit 2 or 3 things and you have something that you can use. So how does this all work? Well, here's the key thing. If you've probably already noticed that when you ask a question, you can ask quite a lot of text. You can cut and paste a whole document into GPT. So, and that's the really interesting thing. It will take a lot of information, and it tries to predict the output that the user is asked. This is why it's very important to say exactly what you want. People are very, if you go and ask the system, give me a quality manual for a medical device, you'll get something. It will give you some headings. But it might not be the quality manual for the pre-filled syringe that you were looking for. So GPT is very smart. It takes a lot of information in, and it uses that information to create outputs that we're used to. But it processes information in blocks, like the whole information. That's a very important consideration. So first of all, it takes in the question, right? It says, and it looks at the whole question, but it's not looking at just the question. It's looking for the context. It's looking to recognize as many words about the situation that the user is trying to describe. And it's trying to say, well, it's a bit like what words should I highlight in these questions when you're putting the highlight marker through? That's exactly what these GPT engines are trying to do. Is they're trying to understand the context of the question and put these keywords together in order to come up with an answer. And then it I've got it here, processing the input. It processes its entire input rather than word by word. And then it uses a decoder to give you the output. And I think the best sort of comparison to tools that you're already useful are, you're probably used to using auto word complete tools or correct spelling tools as you type today. And it's a little bit like an autocomplete function. And that is why sometimes you get the wrong answer. My autocomplete on my phone is always giving me the wrong word. It predicts the word before I finished it. And it predicts usually a different word to what I was intending to type. So, intellectual property, patents, anything you write is intellectual property. And here's something you probably really don't think very much about, is your quality management system is intellectual property. Because your quality management system holds all the secrets to how your company operates. It holds all the secrets to how to test your product. And it holds all the undesirable information of adverse event reporting or whatever else that you really don't want the rest of the world to know about. So you have to think of a quality management system like a patented product. Now, here's the key thing. Who owns the output of GPT? So GPT gives, I started off with a little demo, give me the risk management section of a quality manual. Who owns that text that came out? Well, this is quite interesting. If you read the terms of use for GPT, and I can tell you for some reason, these things are not so easy to find on the websites. The users own the input they provide and the output generated, as long as it's legal. So don't ask questions like, how can I forge banknotes? This is probably not a very wise thing to do. If we go to Google and Gemini, it's not so clear. I didn't find a clause that really spells it out as clear as that. But what we do know, and this is really key, copyright laws belong to a person or an organization. They do not belong to a piece of software. I have never seen copyright and then the name of a piece of software. And that's a very good thing. Otherwise, probably most documents we write would be copyright Microsoft Word. So we have to understand the output from these tools is it's the person who created that output by giving an input who owns that output. So if you're working for the company, you typed a question and you get an output, that belongs to the company. Right? That's a really important piece to know. So confidentiality. We've said, all this undesirable stuff in our quality management system and information. So where are we with the confidentiality question? Be aware of what your company has written down concerning information management policies. Are you allowed to use private email to send company emails? Are you allowed to store company documents on your private storage, on your OneDrive? The company should have a policy that states this. Because when you upload text to a GPT tool, or when you type something in Google, depending on how detailed it is, you are disclosing information outside of your company or outside of your control. And so that piece of confidentiality you need to be aware of. So you have to think of it as a way of the same as storing information, company information on your private drive, right? Or on private email, which maybe you shouldn't be doing. And so quality management set, as I put at the bottom, quality management system documents, they hold all the secrets of your company in one form or another, whether they're an SOP or whether it's a record coming out of the system. So let's look at the document authoring. So what I did is we did this earlier, write the approach to the risk management section. Please write this as if it was in text in the quality manual. This sequence here is typical of how you might do a mini training of a GPT system. So please provide an example of a quality manual for a quality management system specifically designed for a company operating in the medical device and pharmaceutical industries. What does that tell me? It tells me it's a combination product, probably. And then I say the next line, please expand this for a pre-filled syringe. Great, now it's a combination product containing an oncology drug to treat thyroid cancer. I even have the indication of the drug, right? Now write me the risk management section. And then write it if it's the actual text I want to use in my quality manual. And this is an example. So if you don't get the answer you want, teach the system. Pre-train. That's what the big P is in GPT. Pre-trained. And if you want to get the most out of it, you're going to have to pre-train it. Right? And there's some companies out there who are creating their, you can actually OpenAI and I think Google provide packages for companies to run their own system and train their own system for their own products. We will come on to why that may not always be the best solution, but that exists. It can be an expensive way to use a product, but in the terms of a complete product development and the costs you're saving, it's probably nothing. So this is exactly what we saw earlier. Going through these questions I stated there, running this comparison of Gemini and GPT. I don't think we need to go through this now. So regulatory intelligence. So use artificial intelligence to be intelligent with your regulatory affairs. So where do we use it? Well, if we think of just doing this on paper, and this in the company is normally distributed across different departments, depending on the size of your company. But you start at the very beginning. When you're deciding what your product's going to do, what do you need? You need a tool that tells you, where am I going with this? Is there another product like this on the market? Can I process this? Can I identify a similar product? Can I identify the problems that the community, the user community has had with that product? And so at the very beginning, I'm already saying, oh, I'm able to define what my product should be doing. We should remember that there are two things, and only two things, that every regulatory approval around the world for a pharmaceutical or a medical device is looking for. They're looking for proof or evidence that the product is safe to use and that it does what you say it will do, what the intended use is. Just these two things. It may take 100 documents or more to communicate that, but those are the two questions you're always trying to answer. Is my device safe, or is my drug safe? And does it do the job that I'm claiming it will do? So further down the road, I have to identify my applicable standards, regulations. Where am I going to put the product on the market? If USA, I have FDA regulations. If it's Brazil, I have Anvisa. If it's India, I have CDSCO. Which are the applicable regulations? Which are the applicable standards? And for sure, I need to be using the same standards as the similar devices on the market. And which is the applicable guidance? Why is guidance important? Guidance is not obligatory and standards are not obligatory. Guidance is important because it tells us how to interpret and how we should be interpreting the standards and regulations. And while we're on artificial intelligence, there is a guidance document, ICTR 34971. So you just have to remember there's a 3 there instead of a 1. And this is the guidance for artificial intelligence in risk management systems. You can see in various areas we have to think about our cyber vulnerability. If we have a software system, we have to think about our information security if we're running an EQMS. And of course, we have suppliers, we have to manage them. And of course, where the tool really comes in its own is in our pharmacovigilance or medical device surveillance. What is going on in the market? What feedback, what things can I detect further down the road. There we go. Oh, I've been talking through all this. Very good. So, what are the real world applications? So, adverse event detection and monitoring. If there's an adverse event on someone else's device, it might be applicable to my device. Or on a similar drug, if I have a generic, or something treating a similar condition. So it's very interesting for me to be monitoring and detecting adverse events and being able to say, what is this applicable to me? Can I be sure that this isn't going to be my problem in the future? It can help me with my signal detection to set my levels, my threshold levels. Some systems out there, and we see more and more appearing on the market, companion diagnostics. So triage and prioritization. How do I know that this particular measurement, how do I know which therapy to give this patient if it's in an emergency case? Maybe AI can help me with that. Data entry automation. If I can automate the data entry and assign it to the correct categories, I remove, hopefully, human error or minimize it. I may be introducing AI error. Risk management, risk assessment and management, we've spoken about that a little bit, and benefit risk analysis, always an issue, right? I end up with all my blue and red boxes in my risk evaluation and assessment, and I'm having to justify and give a rationale why the benefit of my product is greater than the risk, so the probability of harm occurring. Regulatory compliance and reporting, we've read that. Now let's think about this a little bit. 50% of regulatory submissions fail. They fail because the submission is incomplete. And it may be incomplete not because there's a document there, but the document doesn't contain the right content. Regulatory intelligence. How do I know a change is applicable to my product? So I hear, a new version of a regulation has come out, or a new standard, or a revised standard. I need to be able to assess very quickly, do I need to take action? How long is the transition period? Do I have to wait? Do I have a year or 2 years or 4 years before I have to comply? Or is there action that I have to take immediately with all products going out the door as from next week? This is particularly the case for AI in devices and products, the use of AI with pharmaceuticals and software. So be very aware of this changing landscape. Real world data analysis. The more data, the more information you have and the more you can do with it. But you need the tools to help you. And AI can help you detect patterns that you'd never thought of and maybe consider different kinds of analysis to approach that. And we see that if we have a lot of data, then we see that we may see an existing drug can be very effective on treating a patient with something else that we never thought. We never targeted those patients, but they happen to be in the patient population for that particular drug's target, and it's clearing up more than one indication. So all of this information is very useful. Knowledge is power. Francis Bacon wrote this in 1500 and something. So we see that the more data we can work with effectively, the more power we have as individuals and manufacturers. So, what are the hazards? Well, first of all, do not try and do risk management with AI if you do not understand risk management. So the old rule of garbage in gives you garbage out, also applies here. You have to be an expert user, an expert in the area that you're asking questions in order to assure that you're getting information out that is useful. Now we see that I have bias in data. What is this? Well, I told you that some companies train their own AI systems. And if you're training your own AI system only on your data, yes, the AI system may well give you the answer that you're looking for. How many times have you experienced the employee in a company walking from one expert to another, asking the same question until they get the answer they want to hear? I think, or probably every consultant has experienced this with clients, that the client comes to them with a question and the consultant says no, and then they come to get to them with the same question in another form. So this aspect is, it's not about getting the answer you want to see. Be very aware, bias in data is a risk. It is a hazard. Integration and interoperability. These are not easy tools to integrate with your existing quality management system, and they are a nightmare. How will I validate GPT? I cannot imagine. So if we're trying to validate and verify, these are not easy. They must be regulatory compliant. We have an EU Act, AI Act, so we can check that the AI piece is compliant with the regulatory piece of the AI Act, but will our whole quality management system still be compliant with MDR, IVDR, Annex 9, or with GMP, if I have a GMP quality management system, or with ISO 134? Not easy. So just be aware of these hazards and score them in some way if you're putting them into your hazard analysis. So what are my mitigations? Well, if I've got a great tool that gives me benefits, don't use it where it can create you a problem. So use it as a prompt. So use it to give you ideas. Use it to help you with the language, to give you be able to work much more efficiently. But number two, always author the documents yourself. We go back to that slide earlier. The output belongs to the user who generated the input. So don't go to your boss and say, ChatGPT told me. I can tell you, if you go to a notified body, they're not going to be very forgiving if you use that as an answer. And here's a really important thing. So if we look at things like clinical evaluation and things like that, we can perform those tasks without actually performing the clinical evaluation physically if there's enough data available. But we have to disclose where we got the information and how we got the information. So think about putting a clause in your documents that says how you used AI. It's completely okay. I used Google to identify possible sources of predicate devices. That's completely okay. No one cares, but it's there. You've disclosed it. I used GPT to help me formulate the text in this document. That's okay. Come up with some standard text and put it in your quality documents where you're using AI to help you with those documents and in the quality management system. So what's the good practice? We've sort of already done some of this. Data integrity and accuracy. So truth, integrity, and substance, the magic triangle, right? The data must be true, it must be accurate, it must be complete, it must have substance behind it. And the integrity, whatever you're using, it's your data, your name is on it. Ethical and responsible use. So try and control, try and understand if the system is biased and not giving you the answers you really need, and then take action. If you're using it in risk management, make sure that you're complying with ISO, right? And there's, as I said earlier, 34971 is an ISO guide to help you. Then we have security and privacy. Think about what I said about uploading. If you upload a document or ask a question, you're communicating confidential information. Just be a little bit careful. Maybe you have to neutralize it. Continuous improvement. Build a skill set and share it in the company, how you get the best out of these tools. And establish policies in your company for using AI. Say where and when you can use it. So maybe you can use it for documents that go through final board approval, final approval of a review board. But maybe don't use it for records to identify trending, but perform the trending yourself. Those kinds of policies you need to define for your QMS in your company. So include AI in your general QMS training. So everybody goes into a company, they're going to learn, they're going to see the quality manual, they're going to see where all these documents join together, include AI in that, come up with pull the policy out the drawer and say, this is how we use AI with our QMS and for QMS document. And maybe define your own good AI practices in the company. GAPE, right? Very good. So here we go, company AI policy, and train on identifying risks. So make people aware that AI can give them the wrong answer and it can be biased. And train them on how to be able to identify that kind of thing. So, what is to come? What is the future? Well, automated monitoring of applicable regulation standards and guidance, events, adverse events and literature. It's here now. It exists, right? It can get better, but it's here now. The automated compliance assessment, if I put in the document, if I cut and paste an intended use statement and I cut and paste ISO 13485, I can say, is my intended use compliant with the standard? And it will tell me if it's not or if there are any gaps. But to do this with a complete technical file or a complete regulatory submission, it will take you a bit of time, but you could probably manage it. So there's two things. One is related to the product. So automated compliance with the standards and regulations. Don't forget, compliance is compliant with the customer requirements, compliant with your own QMS. You get a major non-conformity if you're not compliant with your own QMS, and compliant with the applicable regulation standards and guidance. Right? We can discuss whether you have to be compliant with guidance. Guidance is just there to help you. So to move towards automated compliant assessment, yes, you will see that, and you will see that. I think you'll see that at individual document level within the next year, and probably systems that can go through your whole technical file within 2 or 3 years. So here we are. I'm on time, right. I think.
Yeah, excellent, Martin. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for this very informative presentation about the application of AI in quality management systems. All right, so now after the training part, let's move into the Q&A session, right? So during this time, you have this the opportunity to ask any question about, I don't know, any topic about AI, about this fantastic training. And you can use the Q&A button below your main screen. All right. Okay, so let's start by some of the questions we have received. Okay, we have one question from Nakul. Martin, do you have you checked GPT version 3 with GPT-4? do you know if there's any difference between the answers that are given by GPT-3 and GPT-4 in Q&As?
I can tell you what my own experience is, right? Because for a long time, I didn't pay for GPT. I didn't subscribe. But when I paid, I get GPT-4. This is fantastic. What it does is it gives me access to images and all of this kind of thing. So I can put an image into GPT and say, can you tell me what this image is about? And it will give me an answer, which I can't do with GPT-3. Does it give me better answers? I'm not sure, but I don't get it telling me the message is too long so often. And I use GPT also to write me scripts, to write me little programs. So if I want to go through a document and check for something, and I don't want to upload that document, I write a little program. I ask GPT, write me a program to identify all the points. I had a case. I think, yes, it was something like 100 documents, and the customer was using the same term always slightly differently. So I went through, I said to GPT, I need you to write me a program that will open all the documents in this folder and tell me where the errors are in the term, in using this term. And it did it. And I was able to deliver without me having to upload anything or anything else. And then I was able to give the client a table and say, look, you need to correct all these points in your document, or I'll do it for you. But it's probably easier for you to do it. Yeah. So be aware that GPT is not just questions answers. It can help you in other ways. You can say, even if you, I mean, I have a software background many years ago, but even if you want a tool to search documents for certain things and you have a lot of the documents and you need to do a correction, then this is a very good way to create a script to do that.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I understand that the best, you have to get some knowledge to learn how to, to learn prompt engineering, right? So
yes.
I want to make this connection with the question from Heidi. And Heidi asks how to learn pre-training. So you've talked about you have to pre-train ChatGPT before it can give you the right answer, right? So how can you learn pre-training GPT, for example?
Pre-training is the same as you would train a person, right? So not in the sense of pre-trained transformation, which is how the tool was originally created. But if you're trying to get the tool to give you a useful feedback and give you the feedback in the way you need it, think about a document. You may have a table in that document. You want that table with certain columns and certain names across the top. So tell the tool what you need. So say, please list me the hazards that are typical for a pre-filled syringe or an auto-injector. What are the typical hazards? And then you might say, oh, what about, and then you see something's missing and you can say, what about unpackaging the device? Or what about, and you can ask it all these questions. Every question that you're providing in one session is training the device. Now I want to populate my table. So please present me the answer. I want all these categories. What it will normally give you is like just a list. And then you say, now, can you not present this in a table? Can't you give me a table with these columns? And then it'll come up with something and it will give you, and then you can just say, right, now I have this line of information, now give me the same thing. And you don't have to do any more, it will just keep you. You can do it for 100 more lines and it will always create you the right information. But check each line, but it's a lot quicker than you filling out stuff yourself.
Okay, so now now to continue with this discussion, so imagine there's an organization that wants to implement to use GPT for the QMS to its full potential, right? So how would you recommend those organizations to start using AI in their quality management systems?
So for number one, decide on a policy. What is a policy? It's like, where can I use this and where can I not use it? Those are the limitations. So define a policy. Number two, subscribe to the system. So have a company account. Don't use, because otherwise you're going to have everybody using their private accounts. And what have they been asking about? Oh, how do I bake cakes? Or, you know, where's the nearest restaurant for fish and chips? You want a clean GPT, which is for your purposes. There is a risk, which is bias, which I've said, but think about the whole truth, integrity, and substance. If you have your own account, I don't care who you subscribe to, whether it's Pilot or GPT or Gemini, or there's a load of others out there, but have a company account.
Right. And concerning confidential information, in the life sciences and pharma industry, medical devices, how can any company, any organization ensure the confidentiality and security of that sensitive data when using?
Right. So they need an information security management system policy. So this is a policy how we deal with digital data in general. This affects how I deal with emails, how I deal with company information, how I deal with uploading information. There is actually a standard ISO 27001, which is for information security management systems, which is another training all in its own right. But the company should have a digital or use of the internet or use of the cloud policy and people should be trained in it. You know, classic, do not store data, company data on private storage is a classical example. Only use cloud storage. Where it gets very complicated is, I can give a typical difficult example. You have a consultant. The consultant has access to your network and they work from home. The company has standards. They subscribe to those standards, but they don't own the standards. So if the consultant is not in the company, they are actually violating their agreement when the consultant downloads that standard. And they have also lost control of that standard. So they're relying on the good integrity. This is why you need policies. It's like, what are people allowed to do on my network and what not? I was with a company, I do lots of work with a company, and they have devices installed in hospitals in the USA. The devices generate data for this company, not for the hospital.
Yeah.
But the device is connected to the hospital network, and they have to sign a network access agreement with the hospital in order just that the device communicates data to a cloud to a secure cloud outside. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Martin. Yeah, unfortunately, we are reaching the end, right? So I have to make the wrap up. So now I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you very much for participating in this amazing training. Special thanks to you, Martin, for your advice, for your dedication and your knowledge on applying AI in quality management systems. And for the audience, remember that we're going to prepare a recap page with all the questions, the answered questions, and the unanswered questions. Okay. And we also share the recording to you in the following weeks, right? So thank you. Thank you very much for that. And see you in the next training session in the next month. So bye-bye and thank you and have a nice day.